I wanted to know about these DEI sessions. I want to know what you do during one of these sessions. Tell us about it.
Well, I can't tell you all of the secret sauce.
Okay, well, you don't have to tell us secrets,
I'll
but
have to, I'll need everyone to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But, but
okay.
in all seriousness, part of where I start with that type of work is I share, this is a theory of racist, yada, yada. I share what the core tenets are. And then I teach people about philosophies of race. And then I have an emphasis on skepticism, eliminativism, and constructionism, eliminativism. And I find that even just opening that door for people has it has profound impacts on just opening the door to the possibility that, hey, maybe we've got this all wrong. And I'm glad to report that everywhere I've been circulating, people have been very interested, which I'm glad for, because it could just as easily go the other way. They could be very disinterested, but they've also been interested enough to want to learn more. So I look at any DEI session that I do as an opportunity to open the door to this other way of doing things, a more efficient way of doing things. And where the organizations and where the individuals take it from there is up to them. So I do everything from the sort of one stop shop to more extensive work where I dig in, I do the cultural workplace assessment and discovery. Then I help organizations strategize to figure out what is the action plan based on what we've discovered, right? And implement all kinds of educational workshops and tools and webinars and group sessions and all of that along the way to help the organization achieve the workplace culture that they're striving for. And I don't just leave organizations hanging once I've done my work with them, but the work that I do when it's that in depth takes a minimum of 6 months. So it's a long-term endeavor. And I would certainly recommend that for any organization looking to make a long lasting impact, right? Especially as it pertains to engaging with my theory. But one thing I found through my work, which I think it makes sense if you think about it, is that when you help people liberate themselves from the sort of black and white ideological way of thinking, it opens the door to matters of the heart, as you're kind of talking about earlier, because it opens the door to all of the ways in which we try to put ourselves and each other in these boxes, in these categories, which seems convenient, if nothing else, but often results in a sort of dehumanization of the other. Whatever you are that's supposedly the opposite of me, then it results in a sort of dehumanization. So organizations are finding increasingly through working with us that when you can help people outside of the fishbowl of race ideology, it has a bigger impact because ultimately it helps people recognize their shared humanity across the board. And it gives people a way to talk about the problem without all of the barriers that you were referencing earlier. And all of that results in a more productive and generative workplace. And so if you can't tell, I'm passionate about I'm passionate about the work, and I'm consistently working to improve my processes. And something else that I'm working on too through my fiscally sponsored program Together is an online learning platform where people will be able to get certified in the theory of racistness way of doing this type of work. But also individual people can come and take a sort of beginner, intermediate, or expert level course in racelessness in genetics or racelessness in philosophy or history or literature or math or media or whatever they're interested in. Because again, I go back to the premise and one of my core beliefs, which is that education is powers. It's transformational. And I'm trying to make a sort of lofty and very heady theory as practical and tangible for as many people as I possibly can.
It sounds like you're succeeding at that. And we have a comment here from Natara Bot. We can see the passion, very nice. I can see it as well. I love it. So you're in good company here. You know, I'm very passionate about this issue myself. I'm sure you've picked up on that.
Yes.
So
that's why we get along well. That's why we get along.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. It's one because
yeah, it's not the only reason.
yeah, I mean, like we're definitely working on the same kind of thing, but you know, we also have a similar vision. And we, hearing you speak just now, I realized that we've come to the same conclusion that helping people recognize their shared humanity is a pathway to dealing with this problem of racism. Typically, I'm talking about racialized white people here. I'm talking about displaying for them that they have never even imagined to put themselves in a black person's shoes a lot of times. However, the experience that racialized black person may have had is something that they can resonate with and something that they can recognize the humanity involved. But a lot of times, because many people only have superficial relationships with people of other races, races, you know, in quotes. But I think it's a huge problem, you know, and there's a lot of different organizations working on trying to build community across these artificial dividing lines, people working on trying to improve communication across these lines like yourself and others and me. And really what I found is that making those connections, first of all, not only if you make a connection one-on-one with somebody where they recognize your shared humanity, it not only does it open the floodgates, like you were kind of saying before, to them being more accepting of ideas about the reality of the fantasy of race, but also it allows for a level of self-reflection, like kind of a dimension of self-reflection that didn't exist before. And once you send someone down that path, oftentimes it's almost like they're insatiable, trying to find out more and delve into it more. So I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it many times. And I've also seen many beautiful things come out of that investigation and many what I would call progressive, positive and progressive things. And what those things are stronger relationships with people across these artificial racial lines, increased productivity and communication across those lines. And I think that those are the first steps to what I would call a necessity to pressure the powers that do continue to reify race, which I think are far beyond us individually. Ultimately, those powers have to be contended with, I think, and I think the number one culprit is the United States government. And so that is something that's gonna have to be faced head on. For me, I don't think it's something that there can be a slow burn on either. I think that it's something that needs to happen simultaneously with the work that you and I are doing. So I'm glad that I'm glad to hear today that you're on the same page with that, because I felt in the past that when I talk to people who had theories of racelessness, not like yours, not like the theory of racelessness, but like a theory that was based on a foundation of deconstructing the categories. And I don't think I've heard as much about language as you have a huge focus on language, but you know, similar, right? Similar kind of deconstruction of race. A lot of them don't really articulate that it has to be on these multiple dimensions that we deal with the problem. It's mostly focused on one dimension oftentimes, or maybe two. And I really think that we have to deal with it at the level of the law, like many people are. We have to deal with it at the level of religion, like many people are. We have to deal with the level of government, and many people are. And just like the work that you're doing, you're going into all these places. You know, you're going into nonprofits, you're going into the corporate world, you're going into these political arenas, and you're doing this work. So I think that the way that you've combined those two elements into one machine is pretty incredible. And kudos to you for making that happen and making it work. And I just want to throw out there in the middle of this that I wish you all the best in your endeavor.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
Yeah, one thing that I was talking about today on Twitter regarding learning, learning new things, right? Especially things that have an emotional connection to you, or that you have an emotional connection with. I mean, I teach math. So everyone has probably heard of math anxiety. Everyone has probably, a lot. If I tell someone I teach math, there's a 90% chance they'll say, "Oh, I'm terrible at math," or "I hate math." One of those two things. And so I know quite a lot about, even though it's a different context, right? I know quite a lot about how people kind of respond to emotionally to learning. And I've had to adjust my teaching practice to deal with the reality that the vast majority of students do have some kind of mathematics anxiety that's put on them just like race is put on them. Like when they are learning math, it happens with such a frequency. And how do I know that? Because I talk to the students about their experience, and they'll tell you that this teacher told me this, or this happened. I got this on a test, and the teacher was getting frustrated with me, and then nobody could help me, and then I just shut down. I stopped doing my work, or that I was thinking this way about doing math, and it was the complete wrong way. You've shown me the right way now, and now I understand what was holding me back. Whereas before I was thinking it was some other reason that I just made up. There's all kinds of different things that can occur that prevent people from learning, prevent people from having the will to learn. And ultimately, when I say I want to deal with matters of the heart, I guess you could say I want to deal with giving people the will to want to learn, which I found has been an extreme barrier. To get someone in a session like you were talking about that you run, a DEI session, to get them in there thinking that they might actually learn something or grow from something that happens in there, period, is a gargantuan task, I think. And so I want to help you do that, right? And I was kind of alluding to that when we talked offline, is that I want to, I guess, open people's hearts to these ideas more. And I think we have the same idea of how to do that. You're doing it using a different methodology than I would use. But I love finding people who I can work in concert with to help expand their perception and thinking about this issue. Showing people that there's more to these categories, to the racism that they see around them than they maybe thought, and that they have more power individually to actually do something in order to impact that environment and change it. That's powerful. I mean, that's very powerful, and we need that power if we're going to do something about this problem. And the only way to tap into it is to get people on the same page about about what we're working toward, which is to recognize the reality, which is that there's only one human race, that we're all human beings. That's all there is. That's all there ever was. And ultimately, we need to start acting like it. And I do agree that language is one way we could do that. Ultimately, though, there's just so many other avenues I think that are that need to be a priority. There are people preaching in churches about the thinly veiled white supremacy, thinly veiled, there's outward national media talking about the idea of stopping people from replacing racialized white people, for instance. That is now a theme out there. That's a really dangerous message to be putting out there, to be pumping into the public. And I think that it's going to be difficult sometimes to bring people into the fold unless there's something countering these messages that people are receiving, that they're under attack, that they're to blame, that they are somehow, or that they're somehow crippled or somehow disempowered. However, whatever way you're looking at it, it's all negative. And so I definitely think that there needs to be some kind of counterbalance. But also, what I found to be so difficult, people, is to face the reality that if you really want to do something about this issue, if it's an issue that actually matters to you, that you want to investigate, that you care about, it does kind of necessitate a life-changing choice. Wouldn't you agree? I think that your theory even is expressing that, right? You have to change the way you speak. You have to change the way you think. You have to change the way you communicate. You have to change the way you interact. And so this is really a kind of devotion almost that you have to kind of commit to. For me, in order to create this show, I was thinking on the order of 3 years to about what to do, what my inner thoughts and feelings were about this, learning more, educating myself. I've been doing work with race for decades now, but to create this, right, something where I've actively am creating these conversations, seeking out people, trying to build coalitions and movements like yourself, and trying to widen people's ability to perceive these issues. It took a lot of soul searching. It took a lot of thought, not to mention when I mentioned this, that I was doing this to my family and friends, every single one of them expressed concern about my physical safety. First and foremost, every single one to a person. So that goes to show you that the environmental factors that have kind of made people scared to engage in this kind of work or this kind of dialogue. And I meet a lot of people in my open discussion groups who come with fear, but they leave with joy. And I hope that that's the kind of experience that you're getting through your sessions as well.